Hello, 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 everyone. I know that I'm trying to figure out like a good angle for this. And I think I have it. I may adjust just a little bit depending, but I need a bigger surface today for where I'm starting for this project. And I'm going to show you how far I am on the project. I'm doing wonderful, darling. Um, I had a lot of rest. I got a nap in because, yeah, I didn't have to commute home. So we were home today, and that was absolutely wonderful, even though I didn't see any good reason to go virtual, but it is what it is. So I'm going to try this angle out. I tried to get quite a few things prepared, and what I will do is we'll wait a couple more minutes for folks, and then what I will do is, kind of share the process as I'm working through this. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hale, Jennifer G. Hale for my maiden name, and I am affectionately known as Dr. Jen here in on these social media streets. And we are coming to a close for Black History Month. It ends this Saturday. So we know that it's the month, but we know that we celebrate Black history all year long. So for the month of February, Black Sewing Network, we are showcasing African American and or Black, depending on how you identify. We are, hey, Miss Sabs, we are identifying, we are finding African American pattern designers, and we're highlighting them in these spaces. So, hey, Miss Yvonne. So the great thing is that I'm able to find African-American designers and showcase them. And I can not only showcase them in February, but I can showcase them all year long. I tried to focus on, for the month of February, some easy sews, if you will. Not stuff that was difficult for somebody who is learning to quilt, who is interested in doing that, or incorporating quilting into one of their other crafting areas. So whether you want to quilt and add that to a garment or to a bag, it doesn't have to be a quilt. So in order to do that, I've looked for simple projects that you could kind of marry to the two. This project today can be taken from simple to sophisticated, and it's totally up to you how you want to rock it. So we have this black and white figure, if you will. And what I like about this black and white figure is that this black and white figure is like a coloring page. And one of the things that I always like to point out to people is that coloring pages are great ways to do applique. So this is called Layers of Grace. And I'm probably going to butcher up her name, but I believe it's Tony Rain. She can be found on IG, she can be found on YT, and she's also found here in these TikTok streets. And she has a free pattern, and I did provide the link. I do need to put it in my bio. So there's a link to her YT channel where you can absolutely download this. You would follow her YT page in order to see how to do it, or of course you can follow the tips and tricks that I have here. She and I do things just a little bit differently, which is fine because there are a ton of ways to do it. And there are some master fabric artists who will absolutely do this different from the way that either of us do it. So this is the paper piece. And you will see this fits on a regular sheet, 8.5 by 11. I decided that this was going to be too small for what I wanted to do. But you absolutely could take this size and piece this together, and this could be the scraps from your vinyl or leather, and you could make this the front of a bag. There's a little bit of work you have to do because you want to make sure in some cases that it's layered, or that you could do a zigzag over this in order for it to work that way. But you absolutely could put this on a bag. You absolutely could make this a quilt. It's a little bit easier, and we'll talk about what that looks like today. And I absolutely could put this on the back of a jacket. Or a coat or some other figure that I wanted to use. So I love that. So again, welcome in, welcome in. We are going to be working with what we like to call applique. Applique is piecing. We are either in most cases gluing the items down. You don't have to, but I find that it's easier to do that. So I decided to blow this up, and I blew this up the hardest way that I possibly could figure out to do this, because I could have, with certain software, cut this figure and then blew up each section and pieced it together, but that would have been too much like right. I could have taken this to Staples and got it blown up a little bit bigger. That would have been too much like right. Plus it was snowy. So I pieced this together, and from this, I have this. For me, this is much more manageable, and for me, I prefer the size that this is going to come out to be in the end. So I decided to go from this one to this one, and that's just me going on my printer and blowing this up 200%. So I'm working from this template. This is the one that you would get from the pattern, and then you can make it any size you want. And absolutely, I could take this to Staples. I probably wouldn't tape together and do this any other sort of way on my home printer, but I could take this to Staples and I could absolutely blow this up to possibly 400% and make it even bigger. So it's totally up to you what size you want it to be. And I want you to think outside the box while we're doing this. This could be any black and white print. These could be characters, your favorite characters. It's the same type of process regardless of the picture, but this is the one that we're working with. Okay. So of course I did a sample because I always have to try things out, even though I've done these before. And here is the sample. I showed this on the video that I did, and you can see what it will look like, what it could look like in its finished stage. If you go on to her video, she gives you 3 different ways to do this. Thank you. She gives you 3 different ways that you could do this, and the possibilities are endless. This is your pattern. Once you get it in your hands, you absolutely would always tag and give credit to the designer, but you could make this your own. What she did was she did one similar to this. She took one where all of this was black, like this was her hair, and then this was just the band. There was one where she went in with certain layers that were black in here, and then these were color. So you can mix and match this any way that you want. I am good for a gold hoop. So this is the earring that she has, but you could also do a round circle if you want. So you can make this any sort of piece that you want. She didn't add this, but if I feel some kind of way, and I may add that later, I could add a choker. I could add a necklace. I could embellish this. The possibilities are endless. Depending on what I'm using this for is going to depend on what I could add to it. I could absolutely add feathers. I could add trim, because 9 times out of 10, if you're going to hang it, you're not going to wash it, because you're not going to soil it where it's going to get washed. So again, the possibilities are endless for what you can do with applique. I have quilts that are for the bed, and I've absolutely appliqued everything down. And then, it was what it was when we took it to, throw it on the bed. You make sure that you secure the stitches, and hopefully it doesn't unravel much on you. This is called raw edge applique. So the raw edges are exposed, and we do a couple tips and tricks just to keep them from fraying a lot. But this is raw edge applique. There are different types of applique that you can do, but we are working specifically with raw edge applique today. This fabric that I'm using today, this is all batik fabric. When I do art quilts, I prefer batiks. Batiks do not fray as much as cotton fabrics. And that's important for me because I am touching this a lot. I'm working with it. I'm manipulating it, and I don't want it to ravel quickly. So I prefer batiks, number one, because of the raveling. I prefer batiks, number two, because I like the way that the colors pop more. I just think this is just like pop. It's just, these colors are absolutely wonderful. So I absolutely love batik for this reason. Did I ever go to the quilt shop in Ben Salem? Yes, ma'am. I went to the Quilting Circle, and then from the Quilting Circle, I went to the Quilters Academy. So but that's actually where I got my start in quilting, my true start, I'll say. So the Quilting Circle with Kathy, I went there. I started taking classes, did their Tuesday classes. And then I went to the Quilters Academy and hung out with all my quilting buddies from there. Ah! My favorite, Chris. How are you doing, Chris? And you know, Chris, them colors, right? Because that's Chris and I are kindred souls. We love colors. So welcome in, Chris. How are you? Awesome. Okay, so we are going to get started with this. And again, don't think inside the box and say to yourself, this is something that is only for this pattern. The steps that we're going to use could be for any pattern, tips, tricks, things like that. There are a ton of ways to do this. Different fabric artists will do this differently. I'm going to show you the most simple way, which is the way that I do it, to achieve a look like this. And I will show this a couple times throughout, but let me just show you. I also, because I'm extra, I did go in and I did quilt this. And you can see I use different stitches in each part of her head wrap. I used a different stitch. I used the lines for her earring, and then I kind of echoed down here for her shoulders. Tell Dan I said hello. Hello, Chris. And yes, absolutely, you can send it to me. And so here are all of the echoes here. Okay, I haven't decided if I want to touch her skin at all, but right now, this is the way it is. You will find that depending on what you're doing with a sort of art project, you might be working on this for months, years, because some things have to inspire you. And other times you're already inspired and you can whip through a project. So let's get started. And we'll set this over to the side for a minute and we will pull this back out. So again, whatever the design is, in this case, I have this one, Layers of Grace, and I have blown this up to be the size that I want it to be. Once I've done that, if my lines are not dark enough, let's say it's something you drew yourself, the lines are not dark enough, you're going to trace over that. The direction that you want it to go in, you want to mirror that, because when you adhere your adhesive to it, it's going to go on the back of your fabric, and then you're going to flip it and turn it around. So we're going to trace on the back. So there are a couple of different ways you could do this. You could use a light box. And this is, this is a kitty light box because we don't believe in spending a lot of money for a light box. So this is a kitty light box. Crayola, and I can go underneath of this and I can see the lines right through the other side. So this allows me to trace everything from this side. I started off in pencil, but then I went back over this in a red marker because it's easier to see the darker marker. Hey, Miss Joy, it's easier to see the darker marker this way than it is with if you just use it in pencil. So I went over this in the red because that's the marker that I found, even though I probably have a million black ones upstairs. So the light box helps. Now, if you don't have a light box, you can just hold it down to a lighter surface and see it. You could take it to, if you have big picture windows or a big door that has glass, you could hold it up to that. The natural light will shine through and you'll be able to copy it. And when I mean hold it up, I mean take a piece of tape and tape it up to the picture window and then do it that way. So don't try to hold it with one hand and then trace with the other. So you can do it either way. I am doing wonderful, Miss Charmaine. How are you? So on the back now, she marked these with numbers. I just went ahead and marked them with numbers on this side. This helps me to remember the order when I go to do this later. Sometimes I get started with a project and I don't finish a project. And because of that, I want to make sure I number them. What I am going to do is trace these. You could use tracing paper. That's not sticky. So then you're cutting everything out and there's nothing to like glue it to the back. There are plenty of people who do it that way. I don't. You could use freezer paper. You could iron that freezer paper down after you copy everything, after you trace it. You could use Steam-A-Seam. And I won't tell you how old this is, but I have Steam-A-Seam. Steam-A-Seam is expensive. But there is a good thing to the Steam-A-Seam. Steam-A-Seam is fusible. So because it is fusible and it is web, it's porous, which means your needle goes through it much easier than this next thing that I'm going to use. Because, especially when JoJo's was open, this was my favorite. So this is Heat and Bond. This is Heat and Bond Light. There is a Heat and Bond Heavy. You don't want to necessarily use Heat and Bond Heavy because your needle has to go through it and it will gum up your needle as you are working through this. So I like to use Heat and Bond. Heat and Bond is like a sheet of glue, if you will, and it's rough on this side and it's paper on this side. Once we iron this down to our fabric, we'll lift the paper off and there'll be a glue surface on the fabric. And you can see that shine there. This is what the Heat and Bond will do. So it's like ironing glue on to the back of your fabric. So I prefer the Heat and Bond. But again, personal preference. There are people who absolutely love Steam-A-Seam. This is a much lighter product. This is a much lighter product, and it's a lot easier on your needles, especially if you're going through a lot of layers. And one of the things in the video for Tony, when she does a lot of layers. I don't do as many layers as she does, but this is a better product to use than to use all those layers of glue. So Charmaine, for me, to back up, I blew this up, right? They're the same. Let me turn it in the right direction first, right? I blew this up and these are in the same direction right now. So I didn't flip it. If you have a way to mirror on your printer, you could absolutely mirror it and then it'll be mirrored. If you don't have a way to mirror it on your printer, then you have to flip to the back and then trace it. So for example, if I take this is the way that I want it to go. If I want, and that's like a bad image. Let me try to pull it back a little bit. You can't even see it like that. This light is so bright. This LED is light. But I can, well, you know what comes out real clear if I pull it at an angle, you can see her name. But I can see it on here. I can see her body, and then I'm able to trace with a pencil. I can go over all of her parts on the back of this paper. And I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but just so you can see it, if I use the light box, I just want to get all around there. Okay, so you can, like I said, this is not a great light with this lighting, but you can see it here now. So I'm just tracing everything and getting it right where I need it to go. So this is the smaller one. You could start with a smaller one if you want to. This is a great scrap buster. So this is totally up to you how you want to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to cut this out. And then when you cut it out, you'll make it look the way that you want it to look. So I started off again, just copying this, regular copy. I blew it up to the size that I wanted it to be. You could leave it in this size. The size is perfectly fine. And then I flipped over what I blew up and traced it on the back, because the glue is going to go on the back of the fabric. And then when I place it right side up, it'll be going in that direction. Does it matter in which direction she's going? No. So you absolutely could have one person going this way. You could have another person going this way. That's totally up to you. It is your decision. There are some things that have to be directional in what you do, but it's totally up to you. I wanted her to go this way, so that's why I made sure that I did a mirror image, but you don't have to. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over, and I have plenty of heat in mind. And again, you can still get this from Wally World. I haven't seen this in the lobby, but I know you can get it from Wally World. You can get it from the Zon. The great thing is that because I did this with the red, you can see, I don't even need the light box for that. You can see how I can cover this whole page and see exactly what I need to see. I can either use a regular pencil, mechanical pencil. It's totally up to you which one you want to use. I need to cover this. This, again, the heat and bond for me was relatively cheap. I want to say it was no more than maybe $3 a yard. And that was with the 40-50% off from JoJo's, which is why I miss JoJo. So I don't mind, but here's the thing. I save scraps. Because depending on the size project that I'm doing, I can, for example, use a scrap for this. Okay. So I lay the whole thing out. I need to have the placement of the entire thing. So I am going to trace all the way around. And again, I don't care what figure you're doing. And I won't call out certain cartoon characters for your kids that you can get in black and white images if you do a search for it, because you're not supposed to sell them. But absolutely, if it's for personal use, who's going to know and who's going to care? But you can absolutely get them. You can trace them. And I'm just doing her outline. I will say this. There are fabric artists. When they do this, you could take your fabric with your light box, and instead of outlining this to go to create the fabric the way piece that I'm going to do, you could absolutely do this on your fabric. So you can take the fabric of your choice, lay your fabric on top of, and it wouldn't be this one, right? But this is just the example. If this fit, you could lay this on top of your piece. This would not be big enough. And then if you use your light box, you see how you can see those lines going right through this? I could use my fabric pen and I can trace the whole image onto the fabric if that's what I choose to do. I prefer, and again, it just depends on what type of product you're using when you do this. So it is up to you which way you prefer to go. You'll see different people do it differently, and that's fine. Okay, so I have the whole thing traced. Let me move my blue fabric that I don't feel like folding up at this moment. And I'm just gonna rough cut around this. I don't need to go too close to the lines because when I cut the fabric out, that's when I want to be a little bit more precise. This is going to help me with placement. So I'm just going to rough cut that out. And again, these big pieces I'm going to save because I can use them in another project, because we don't waste stuff if we don't have to. So I'll just put that in my bag for now because I will lose this 2 seconds after I'm talking to you. Okay, so we have this piece that's cut out. Once this piece is cut out, I'm going to give you a trick that another person at the Quilters, no, were we at the Quilters Academy by then? No, I think we were still at the Quilting Circle. So when we were at the Quilting Circle, what someone shared with me was to create another outline with big figures. And what they did, you know, if you're talking about saving money or not having a whole bunch of glue, they cut all the way in here, and this gave you all this area in here to save, and it wasn't as much glue because you're putting layers on top of this as well. There wasn't as much glue in the center. I love that, especially for bigger pieces. I'm going to leave this the way that it is, but just as a tip, you could cut all this out, and then you just have this outline, this thick outline that you're going to use when you lay this on your fabric. I am still going with my brown girl. So this is the brown fabric that I'm using. Again, your skin tone, your choice. So you can choose the skin tone that you prefer. Part of it is that I didn't feel like going upstairs and looking for some other skin tones because I have them. And we lay this on top of our fabric. Make sure that you press your fabric. Make sure that your fabric, let me do this on the end that I've already cut so I can leave the straight edge alone. Make sure that your fabric is pressed and it's nice and flat. If there are any wrinkles, pop those wrinkles out because you don't want those wrinkles in your project. I thought this was the end that I cut. Oh well, doesn't matter. I'll be using this for 20,000 other projects. Okay. Now, of course, my ironing board is not that wide for this one, but that's okay. I'm going to lay this out. Everything nice and smooth. And I am just going to give this a light press. I just want to hold it down because I'm not getting the whole thing on my ironing board. And I just want to make sure that I get it nice and smooth. I will say this, Heat and Bond, Steam-A-Seam, when you're using these products, there is glue on them. And the glue, like any other adhesive, will melt. It's melting to adhere to the fabric. If you leave the iron on it too long, it will melt away and then nothing will stick. So you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you're not applying heat for a long period of time. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the roses, Amanda. Okay. You know how we feel about our scissors. We should have paper scissors. We should have fabric scissors. Which do you use? Because this is paper and this is fabric. If you don't want to dull up your fabric scissors, then you use your paper scissors. But make sure that you have a decent pair of paper scissors, because a dull pair of scissors will also cause your fabric to fray a little bit more, and you don't want that either. So now we're cutting out just like we do in elementary school. I'm going to go on the lines this time. I'm going to ignore that one line that I drew, so I'm not cutting anything out. I do want to try to get this as smooth as possible. So I really don't want any jagged lines. If it's a little jagged, it's going to be okay. All of this I'm going to cut away on, so I could rough cut around this to begin with, which I probably should have done. I'll cut that off later. So let me just rough cut, because I'm going to get rid of all of that. I could keep it because, again, I don't throw anything away. But sometimes it doesn't make sense to keep something that small. But let me just get rid of that fabric. Okay. So we're going to go around all the grooves. And again, this doesn't matter if you are using any figure that you want. You could absolutely use characters. You could create your own design. So if there's some line drawing that you want, you could take, this is the beginning of portrait art. So if you are doing some portrait work and you decide to create an image of your baby and you have a good design picture of that, you could do that. That's another lesson for another day, but we absolutely could use those pictures to create the line art to cut this out. A lot of times people use dancers. I have dancers hanging up on another wall that I have used for applique. Okay. Now, if I got up, I do have applique scissors, but I'm trying to use my paper scissors, which is a little aggravating for me. The applique scissors will get into the corners a little bit better, but I'm pretending that a lot of you are beginners and you may not have all of those products. And if you don't have all of those products, then I don't want you to go out and spend a lot of money on things that you're only going to use once or twice, even though you could use applique scissors a lot. You can use them as snips for your projects that you're sewing with, but Let me show you what they do. So this has a little bit of a groove. And this will drive me crazy. But what it does is it allows me to get in there. Like you're going to be like, girl, that girl was struggling for nothing. But I can get right into those grooves and get right around that a lot easier than I can with my bigger scissors. And they're all sizes of applique scissors that you can use to get around those pieces. But this curves right around those little circles for me. It's going to get right into those spaces. And yes, I'm moving 10 times faster than I was moving when I was using the paper ones. But again, not everybody goes out and buys 85,000 pairs of scissors like I do to make their life easier. And I want to say that when I took a class of said quilt that we will not talk about because that is a whip, they recommended the scissors and another pair to get into these corners. Okay. Because they had glue on it, that's the reason why I'll get rid of that piece. And then this is the end. The bottom, we'll just cut that straight across. Okay. Ooh, got a little bit of a wrinkle in there, but that's okay because this is going to be covered. So this is our base. And again, depending on what you want to do, you could see this as this could be just like a big fro. So one of the designs that the designer did, that Tony Rain did, was she absolutely cut out what was the hair, and then she laid the black fabric on top, and she made this the hair, and then I think she put like a big circle type applique in the center to have like a flower on the side of her hair. Your design, your choice. So once you kind of get the hang of it, you make this your own. So this is what I was talking about. What she did was she cut another piece for the hair and then laid that piece right on top of this piece. I'm not going to do that for that. I'm going to build out this, which is going to be her head wrap, and I'm going to lay it out on this. So we have this. We're going to leave the paper on here for now, because if we take the paper off, and when we iron it, it's going to stick to whatever we iron it onto. If you are going to do a lot of applique, you could get a piece of silicone, a silicone sheet, and you could press this onto the silicone sheet. Then it won't stick to the silicone sheet. So if you wanted to get a silicone sheet, you could take the paper off, press it onto the silicone. But if you don't have that, you can absolutely leave the paper on for now. So I am not making a bag, but you can absolutely use this to make a bag. Somebody puts her stuff down and then she doesn't remember where she puts it. So just to back up, this is the sample that I made. So this is going to be the beginning of just a simple wall hanging for me. I blew up the picture from the artist 200%. This is the bigger piece. I worked on this last night, and then I quilted it. So it's actually quilted in here. So the only places left, and here too, the only places left that I need to quilt are out here, and that's a decision for what I want to do. Haven't decided yet. I don't have a backing on it just yet, so you can see the quilting on the batting. I don't have a backing on it. You can see the quilting on the batting so far, but I will add the backing and then I will outline and do some other things on there. But to really get the stitches to do what I wanted them to do, I opted not to have the backing. and the on that one. But that's just, you know, that's me. Okay. So here comes the wonderful part where if you want, you can do another layer. Again, that's going to be now another layer of fabric and glue. A lot of layers of fabric and glue if you choose to do it this way. Or you can do the individual pieces. That's why we made sure we got the humps and the bumps, because then you can line these up for these. The brown, if you don't do something wider than the lines, the brown in this fabric might show through. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that when the designer did this, she did this base as black and then layered on top of the black. So I can use my scrap pieces, or I could use my yardage, it doesn't matter. But if I use my scrap pieces, I'm going to do at least try to get the biggest pieces that I can for these. I might have to, I know what I had to do. I had to use yardage for these bigger ones, but I can absolutely get these smaller ones in this. So again, I'm going to line that up. I do want to go around this and leave a little bit of an edge, because if I cut on the line with this heat and bond, then when I go to cut the fabric, I'm going to lose some of it, and I want the biggest shape I can possibly get. I am going to layer because that's my choice. So when I layer, I look at what's going to be layered. So I'm going to draw a line. And I wish I could say like that mouse's name for what I do when I use his head. But you have to layer because you want some of the pieces to overlap. So I'm going to draw the line. I'm going to draw the line that is their original line. And then I know that when I cut, I like to just give myself 2 little lines here. That lets me know, just cut a little bit more because that's going to help me with the layering. I labeled this number 9. So I'm going to call that 9. I'm going to cut off, again, leaving some excess. But I don't need all of that fabric to be glued and gunked up. This little slither, I absolutely could use it, but we're not, so we'll get rid of that. So here it is. I have enough space around the edges so that when I lay it down and cut it out, I have enough. So I have 9 done. Number 9 done. I have 9 done. This one is going to fit for number 1, so I'm going to come to number 1. The great thing about this head wrap is this doesn't have to be perfect. So because it doesn't have to be perfect, you're not going to sit here with precision and try to get all of this cut out. So you can give this a rough draw around in order to get those pieces done. If you're eating dinner, you're going to walk away. Make sure that you... I didn't put number 1 on that. Huh. Oh, I know. It's on. I'm doing the wrong. You're doing the wrong side, Jennifer. Shh. Nobody told me that. I did the right side for this, and then I'm doing the wrong side for these. So I should be on the red side. Good thing I caught that. Oh, that's what happens when you don't read, right? There you go, Monica. Monica told me, and I wasn't paying attention. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to erase those. That's just going to go into my pile for later. Reading is fundamental, and it is fundamental to make sure. And Monica was like, girl, you're doing it wrong. And Jojo says, do you want to keep all that stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And then I get to it, and then I don't use it. Thank you, darling. I appreciate you for paying attention because you see Jennifer wasn't. Okay, let's try this again. Let's start with the bigger. And again, I'm going to show you how I shift them. I want some edges. Let me come down just a little bit because it's like if I'm using Steven seam, that stuff is expensive. My pencil doesn't have a point. So let's go the right way this time. There we go. And this is number 4. And I'm layering this way. So I'm going to put the line here to remind me that I need to layer. And then I'm going to shift this over just a little bit to give myself room for the layer and to be able to trace the next piece. You don't want them one on top of the other because it won't give you room to layer. If you're not layering, you can absolutely do these back to back to back. My problem is that I am not good with a precision cut. And because I'm not good with a precision cut, when I get down to cutting those layers, sometimes I will cut a little bit more than I need to. So adding a little extra helps me to layer, and it assures me that the background is not going to peek through. I slid this over a little bit to give myself room. 6 is a small piece, so I'm going to skip that for right now. Let me make sure I'm paying attention to my comments because Monica is right on top of it for me, and I love her to death for that. And to be honest with you, if I didn't flip it over, depending on what I'm working on, I would have had one going in the other direction, would have called it an afternoon. But that's why I like to do this in pencil. There are people who will do this in pen. And because I mess up, oh yeah, we need to do stuff in pencil. And I can shift this down. That was 7. And the great thing is that if I'm using one big sheet, I can get them all done. In that one big sheet. Matter of fact, I won't even use a small piece. I can use this. But I want to make sure that I'm giving myself enough room. It's not the end of the world, but what happens is if you're using her head as your guide, again, that brown could peek through. If you have a background, if you're just laying it on top of a background, you could make her crown a little shorter and it won't be the end of the world. And 9 is her face. 10 is this other little small piece. Hey, Harmony, how are you doing, darling? I was living vicariously through your live at from your videos at QuiltCon. I said, I came all the way to Virginia. She didn't come out the house, but she went to QuiltCon. I'm feeling some kind of way. No, actually, I'm not. I know that you couldn't meet with us. That's okay. I still want to meet with you in person, though. Okay, somebody needs to get a point on her pencil. 1, 2. So Harmony said that she likes to use, okay, I didn't do 3. She likes to use colored pencils when she does this. And absolutely. Like I said, I prefer anything because I make mistakes, and I absolutely prefer to use something that allows me to erase when I make the mistake. So you can erase with colored pencils. The good thing is that if you're on your paper, you're not on your fabric. And so because you're not on your fabric, it can be erased or you could draw over top of it. But again, what we're not going to do, if we can help it, is waste product. But again, Miss My JoJo's, this stuff was cheap enough where I just bought it by the bulk and kept it on hand. So I'm just finding all those pieces, but you can see I am marking the numbers. To make sure that I know which piece is which piece, because ask me how I can do something and then not what I'm doing, not know what I'm doing. Hey, Carmen, am I going to Baltimore? I'm gonna try to go to Georgia. I'm not sure if I can go to Georgia. We'll see. It depends on how the school year falls for me next year. I have every piece but one, I think, and the earring. But I'm gonna hold off on the earring for right now because I like the designer did a round earring, so I'm not sure if I want to do that clip type earring, that hoop, or if I want to do a round one. So I'm gonna hold off because it doesn't have to be the first thing to go down. So I did, again, I like big. Big is better for me. And so because big is better for me, I prefer to go big. But again, if you're doing something like a bag and you want to put this on a bag, you can absolutely do a smaller piece. I'm in Pennsylvania near Philly, but you know, Maryland is nothing but a hop and a jump. Okay, so here is the actual picture that we have. And I just blew this up to make it bigger. So in the beginning, before you came, Harmony, we talked about, you know, there are people that use freezer paper. Absolutely, you can get it right from the dollar store. I also have tracing paper upstairs because when I took a class, I listened. I usually don't, but I listened and I got tracing paper. So I have the tracing paper. The tracing paper will help you to put the image onto your fabric or onto the base. So that's a great place to use that as well. But you know, there are just so many different methods. So I'm just showing the one. But yeah, because we weren't bringing all that stuff downstairs because right now my house looks like a train wreck. Okay, so all of the pieces are here. Now it's time to have some fun. We know that the shoulder this is part of her dress, or whatever this is here. It's her shoulder, it's part of her arm, it's part of the shirt. You can change this to have a different effect if that's what you want. That's totally up to you. You could cut it off right here and it's just her neck. You could not have anything and she could just have a bare top. That's up to you to, again, decide how you may want to change this. Again, you did not have to do all these solid pieces. When the designer did this, she used these three as like the band, or these four. Man, I think her hair was peeking out here, but she had her hair peeking out here. She used this as the band, and then all of this was her hair that was back here. You can make this look any way that you want, but I like this. So this is Layers of Grace. This is the pattern. It's a free pattern. Tony Rain. You can follow her on YT, and she absolutely gives you this pattern for free. So this one is free. She has other patterns that are sold online as well. So she's giving this one away for free. You can download it, watch her video. She shows you how to put this whole thing together, soup to nuts. So this is a great free pattern because everybody isn't giving everything away free. Okay, so we're gonna just cut again these pieces out. If there are any pieces that are kind of like extra, I can cut around them. I'm not cutting right on the line because I'm going to cut on the line when I cut the fabric out. That's a piece I'm going to save. All those are going to go into mine. Okay. Here comes the fabric fun part. You're going to decide, and I already have colorways picked out, but you're going to decide what fabrics you want to use. This is a great opportunity to use up those fat quarters, those scraps that you have. Again, I prefer to use, if I can help it, batiks, because I think they are bright in color, but I also like batiks because they don't fray as much as regular cotton, quilter's cotton frays. So I prefer the batiks. You could go with solids. You could absolutely go with prints. I like batiks for some reason. Even with the prints, I feel like even with the layering of them, they work even though they weren't meant to work together. So mixing and matching them is perfect. And then here are scraps that I can use when I have things that are left over that give me an opportunity to work with art and then to use those scraps as well. I'm going to pay attention to my drawing and my pieces. Of course, I need this one because this has my numbers on it, and I want to make sure that if I'm going to double up a color, that I'm not touching another one. That's just me. And I can show you again here. I use the reds twice. So I want to make sure that I don't have one red sitting next to another red, one blue sitting next to another blue, the prints of the goldish colors sitting here, or these gold sitting here. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about if I don't use all the same colors. Thank you. So yes, and yes, I know. I worked on that one last night in preparation for today. So like this was how quick it went together. It takes, of course, a little bit longer when, you know, I'm running my gap online, but it really doesn't take that long for it to go together. So you have some small pieces that may work. You'll notice that I'm not cutting out a bunch of stuff because some of these pieces are extremely small and somebody will lose those pieces if she cuts them all out. So, you know, if you have a method to your madness for how you like to cut things out and keep it organized, you absolutely use it. But, you know, when you're online, sometimes you forgo some of that process. So I will find a piece that works. And again, you could be more strategic in this. Press enough just to get that piece down there. And then we'll cut that out, but we'll leave this off to the side for a sec. Again, if you feel like it, you can kind of audition your colors to play the way you want them to play, especially when it comes to layering. So this is the piece close enough to her face. The next piece is number 8, and that's going to arch around that green. So if I want to play with colors and decide what's going to work right up well next to that green, I can play around with these. And then I can find number 10. And then, oh, okay, let's try that again. I can find number 8. I need to cut off the excess. That's just not going to be used at all. Again, either to my scrap pile or to the trash. If this is the next color that I want, I'll take that to my ironing board. Press out that little crease that's there. Put this on my fabric. I don't need a long press. I just want this to adhere to the fabric. Because this was such a big piece, I'll cut this off. I can always use fabric scissors on, I can always use paper scissors on fabric. I never want to use my fabric scissors on paper. Okay, so then that's on the green. The next color beyond that is 7. Let me pull this one off. And again, I'm just thinking about how I want to layer it. And you know, I've already done some of this thinking work ahead of time. But I just want to think about how I want to layer this. And I've thought about like the colors that I want next and the prints that I want to go with this and how they're going to layer. And I may not have all the right choices. I may have to go back in and think again about what I was thinking, but I knew how I wanted them to play well together. These are 2 yellows, but I love this yellow. I do. I love anything that's bright. And I'm going to press that out. So Jen, I am working on Applique, and we are making a applique piece. This one is big enough to be like a wall hanging. And this is Layers of Grace by Tony Rain. And it is, like, as I keep putting it on the floor, going to come out looking like that. Except the colors are going to look a little bit different in this one. Okay. Make sure that I shook everything out. So I have 10, 8, 7. Ask me, how did 9 become the face? I don't know. Oh, I know, because then I went back down and did 10. Okay, so we have this. So we need a 6. And this is where I want this red to come in. So right now I'm playing around with my colors. Here's 6. And I'm going to make this fit on here. It's going to fit. It's going to fit. Press out those wrinkles. I'm going to layer my fabric. Again, I'm working with heat in mind. That's what I'm choosing to use. Thank you. That's what I'm choosing to use for this project. And so because that's what I'm choosing to use, I don't need to press heavy and then end up with it melting. So I am pressing light so that it just holds to the fabric, but it's not going to melt through the fabric. So I have 10, 8, 7, 6. I need 5 next. These are the longer pieces, 5 and 4. So again, if I'm using my scraps, then I need to think about those pieces that I have a lot of fabric, because it's not going to work for something that I have smaller pieces for. Again, I can repeat the colors if I choose, or I can have them all one single color. This is your project. It's your way. What I really, again, think helps with the popping of the colors is the batik. But again, as a tip, if you're doing applique, and I want to say, who was it? Was it Belinda? Was it Miss Belinda that just did a bag? She did a Zeta Phi Beta bag. And she absolutely did applique for the front of that bag. Okay. So we can start to see that coming together. And I love that bag. I was like, okay, go ahead, girl. I know that Renee has done, and I know that Dee, when they do their bags, and I can't think of the name right now, the Hugo bag, I think it is, where they do the different animal characters. It's applique, except they're not adding the glue on the back of it to do it, but it's that same layering technique, auditioning those colors to create the face or whatever it is that they need. Okay, so then 4 goes behind this. Let's see what we have in the blue. That might not work for this 4, but this blue might be, do I want to go dark? Or do I want to go back to light? So again, I pulled out colors that I knew that I had in my stash because we won't discuss how much batik I have. I love batik fabrics, and again, I love it for applique. I love it because the colors pop for any project, but for applique, I love the fact that the batik doesn't fray as much as a quilter's cotton will fray. So you can manipulate the fabric a little bit more and you don't have that issue of fraying. Now, we are not going to get to the quilting of this tonight because that takes a minute and it takes some thinking and some planning. Okay, so again, you can start to see how this is building out for me. 3 is another long piece. Was it Captain Noah that was red and yellow, pink and green, purple and orange and blue? Okay, so I'm going back to my yesteryear's days. Okay, and again, if the pieces are too small, for me, they go in the trash. If they're big enough, we save them. And again, we're thinking about what those colors are that we have already. I stopped on orange. The blue is not going to be big enough. And then I just kind of get selfish with some colors because I'm like, I don't want to use that. I could use it for something else. Because they are not necessarily my scraps, but they are in my batik pile. And so because they're in my batik pile, I do, sometimes I use them. And then they become a scrap. But I want to prep everything together. And this, again, is my preference to do this because if I prep everything together and I see it together and it doesn't work, then I can pull something out. If I cut and layer, sometimes I can't see the end result to change my mind. Okay, so that's 3. This is my shoulder. I don't need that one right now. This is 1. That goes in that corner. And this is 2. And I'm just getting rid of the excess. Again, this is raw edge applique. There are other methods to doing applique. And usually Jennifer doesn't do those. So Jennifer usually is not in the mood to do anything other than raw edge. Raw edge has been my rider in terms of what I think about and how I think to go with this. If I need to turn the edges under and then stitch with hand stitch, that's not going to happen. Because to know me is to know I am not doing anything by hand if I don't have to. It looks better because you don't see the stitches, but I'm not doing that. I will, with applique, a lot of times, if I am using my batiks, I will absolutely keep some scraps that might make sense to keep. Others will go into my scrap bin. Again, you don't want a lot of heat on your heat and bond because it will cause the glue to melt. And we're going to take this pink last. And we're going to finish this off with this pink. And so for this one, I did manage to get just about every color in there once. Usually doesn't happen that well for me, but like I said, whenever I'm on live, they like to, my fabric likes to act like it has some sense. Okay. And we're getting ready to clean off that table. Whoops. Okay, so we rough cut everything except for the shoulder. The shoulder's still sitting off to the side. And we can kind of see how this is built out. So we can see the colors. I'm going to lay these out, but I need to trim these up so that I can place them on my person. So I'm going to slide those out the way. I'm going to bring my person to the front. And we're going to do some cutting. And again, if I need my pieces, I will save those pieces for another project, or they will go in the scrap pile. If I put these in a scrap pile, I will take the paper off of them just so that they don't get caught up in the pillow or whatever else I'm using those scraps for. Because I have two different types of scrap piles. I have a scrap pile that I use for stuffing a pillow, and then I have a scrap pile that I use for additional applique projects. Okay, I didn't mark this one, but I knew I needed a little bit left there. And they're going to sit right there. This is trash. I'm trying to get as close to the line as I possibly can get. And then remember, I'm leaving myself a little bit of extra because I can trim that down if I need to on this side. Okay, so you can kind of see it. I'm getting close to that line, but I left myself some extra for layering here. And that's going to go right there. And we'll adjust that, and it's going to curl up as I go just because, but you can start to see that come together. So almost like fitting the pieces of a puzzle together. And again, if I could, because that's what I do, I could iron all this down to begin with. But if for some reason I have something that didn't work, or once I laid it all down, I said, you know what? I don't like that color like that. If I iron it down, it's going to be hard to get it back off. It's not impossible, but it's going to be hard. So that's going to go there. I love how that yellow is popping. And so we're just going back now in that reverse order. Those dashes are telling me leave some edge because we're going to layer it. They're going to go underneath, not on top, but it doesn't even matter. With this head wrap, because nobody is going to know that you made something thicker or thinner than what the pattern called for, except for maybe the pattern designer. And if you call that creative license, then you absolutely know that you could do whatever it is that you wanted to do. But we're laying those out. With raw edge applique, you are going to stitch down your fabric. You are going to make a decision whether that fabric is stitched down with a straight stitch or whether it is stitched down with a decorative or a zigzag stitch. Again, that is your choice. I often use a zigzag stitch to stitch my fabric down. There's nothing wrong with using a decorative stitch. A decorative stitch, if you do not have patience, takes longer. If you have the patience of Job, the decorative stitch is for you. If you have no patience like me, the decorative stitch is not for you. Because I don't want to sit there waiting for my machine to finally make one rose. I could have been halfway around the shape by that time. That's just the way I feel. And so I prefer to use either a zigzag or straight. Straight obviously will get you through it a lot faster. And it depends on your quilting. If you're going to quilt the heck out of it, then it really doesn't matter if you use a straight stitch, because you're going to come back over those edges again with the quilting. That was 7. This is 8 and 9. So you're working through your project the way that you need to work through it. If you're making a bag and you're using leather, you're not going to quilt inside the leather usually, unless there's some sort of design that you need to do, but you're not going to quilt all of the leather. Most people aren't doing that. But if you are doing most of that, then with the leather, you could just use a straight stitch. You don't have to use a zigzag over it to hold it together. Okay, and then that goes there. So Irene, the pattern is called Layers of Grace. And this is an applique pattern. It is free by Tony Rain, and you can find her on YT. She gave this pattern away. I said free, right? But she does have other patterns that you can purchase. And the goal, obviously, other than promoting the pattern today, is also to make sure 6 is up top, right? Oh, no, 6 is not up top. This was something I knew something didn't look right. 5, 6 went here. 7 went here. Then 8 goes here. Okay. You can use these with any sort of applique project that you need to use. And then 10 goes here. Okay. So then you can see right now how the base of her head is going to look. Did you cut out the earring? No, Sabs, I didn't cut out the earring yet because I was waiting to see what the crown looked like to determine if I still wanted to use that earring, or did I want, Tony had one that was round, and I was like, do I want to use a round earring this time instead of that shape? I could use the triangular, that I call them the ghetto earrings. I could use that. So I wasn't sure what type of earring I want to use, so I didn't cut the earring out yet. So that's the only reason why I held out on it. Thank you. So I'm looking at the colors down, and I'm deciding before I attach these to her crown If there's something that I don't like, is there something that I want to switch out? You know, if I'm happy with this, now it's time to place all this down. Thank you for getting your daily heart me. So you're making decisions before you attach, because once you attach it, that's it. It's you can move the glue, but it becomes difficult, and so it's easier to make your decisions, see what you see, change it if you don't like it. Like this works for me. So I'm happy with the way this looks. But if for some reason I didn't like something, let's say I didn't like this red here, I could take the red out. Is it the same size as this one? This is not this one. This is, let me move one that I did. If I didn't like this color, let's say, I could take another piece that I had and I can push that green in there. I don't like that green with that because it looks washed, but I'm just saying you can flip in a different color. So you can audition everything out before you put it down. Once you put it down, that's it. There are people who do not use steam and seam. They don't use heat and bond. They will absolutely just lay this out as is and they will attach it. And that's fine. That's their method. That's the way they do it. I prefer to use the gluing method, but understand that when you do that, a lot of times it sometimes will gunk up your needle when you're stitching. Okay, let me move that green back out the way because like I said, I didn't particularly care for it. And let me put this color back in. All these pieces are going to either lay on top of my bottom piece. So I would start with the bottom piece and then layer everything on top of it. Or if all of the layers, because I put the excess, if I had put the excess back here, then I would lay everything on top of the front piece. So you have to remember where you put those excesses, and I put the excesses on this side. So I want everything to lay on top of the excess rather than laying the excess on top of everything. And again, for this, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to be able to tell the difference anyway. But if that mattered, that's my process for the way that I'm thinking. So I'm going to line everything up the way that I need it to go. I can either take my finger and pop this if it wants to come. Sometimes it doesn't. I can fold this and sometimes it will come off. But if it ultimately doesn't do that, I can use some sort of straight edge, like a pin, and I can score it. And if I score it, it will help to create a little cut in the paper, and it will help me to pull it off. One of the reasons why I like to pull the paper off scoring it is because I'm not pulling it off the edge. So I'm avoiding playing with the edge of this and causing it to fray. Every fabric, all the cottons at some point will fray, but you just don't want it to fray as much. Okay, so again, thank you, Monica, for answering that question for me. I'm just scoring it and I'm using my scissors. I'm not going hard because I don't want to cut my fabric when I'm scoring it. So I'm just doing it light enough so that I break the paper, but I'm not doing anything to the fabric. I'm looking for those indents that I have in here that are letting me know my placement. And again, it doesn't matter right now that I haven't pressed this down. Because I'm laying these out, and if I need to adjust them, if I didn't press it, I can adjust. If I press, I can no longer adjust. If I didn't cut my pieces wide enough, it's not a problem because I can use my scissors and cut off some of the excess around the head. I want to make sure in the insides that I have the layers I'm supposed to have. So I want to make sure that everything layers the way it's supposed to. And if I need to cut off a little bit of excess from the edges, that's not a problem. So we're laying those out. This is 4. Thank you. I was quite impressed with myself with the one that I did yesterday. I was like, this came out better than I thought it was. Because I do second guess sometimes what I do. Like, did this really work? And that gray fabric that I laid it on top of, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because I'd never used gray. I am very much a blue person. And I'm like, oh, this is sky. So getting me out of my comfort zone is a lot. So again, I'm taking, this is the front fabric. I'm turning it on the back. I'm just using my scissors just to score the paper. I'm not going heavy on the fabric because I don't want to rip the fabric. And then I'm laying it in place. I could, at this point, if I choose, start pressing things down. And again, if there are places that I need to adjust, like I'm looking and I'm like, I don't know how that happened. I can get that brown that is going to be right here. I'll just cut that off. So traditionally, when I do this, and I followed the directions of the designer, I should have given myself a little excess around here, and I didn't. I just lay it on the fabric, real wrap. So I don't lay it on the head, but I did want to do it the way that I wanted to do it the way that she had it. So I tried her method, which is fine. Like I said, I can layering it over top. I can see, and like I said, I'll do some cutting right around there just to get that to work. They'll never know the difference. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one is 6. Remember, I messed that one up before. Sometimes the fabric will come right off. The paper will come off. Sometimes it won't. We can lay 6 there. The biggest thing is that I'm making sure that the gaps are filled in here. I can get some of my thread to attack that if I have a problem. But I want to make sure that everything works. If something isn't working, I can cut a new piece or I can add another strip. It is not the end of the world to add another piece. Nobody will know. Like I can see right here. But like I said, I can cut all that off. And you'll never know that I screwed that part up. And that's probably just because I did her hair a little bit too light. Okay. I think I'm far enough. I want to push this under. I just have those 2 pieces to go. I need to get this orange underneath of this purple. Because the point is sticking out and I don't like that point sticking out. And again, I don't need to cut it down too much. But if I did this again, I would just make sure that the loops were big enough at the top. And I'm just going to give this a light press. Just to hold it in place. I can press it again later. But I just want to hold that in place. Because I am happy with that. And I will go back and fix that other one. And then let's add this last piece here. Let me score this one because it's small. So I know it's going to cause me a problem. And like I said, I can come right into that center. So I'm not, if I'm disturbing anything, I'm just disturbing the paper and I'm not fraying that edge. Make sure I get this in the right direction. And we'll get that right there. And we'll move this over. I don't know. Let me get that. And I know that, like I said again, I didn't cut the earring out. And the only reason I did not cut the earring out was because I was thinking about doing a round earring, but I think I still like that other earring. Okay. And we're just going to press everything in place. You don't need to, again, it doesn't have to be a heavy iron. You want everything in place so that it looks like that. We're still going to stitch this down. You'll see where I have some brown down here. I'll cut that off. Turn my scissors the right way so I can get rid of that little brown that's down there. And again, that just may have been off for my cutting, and that's fine. It is not the end of the world. It's not like somebody said this has to be this is exact measurement. The curve has to look like this, the way that way. So I can cut that off. I can also mask some of this with an embellishment. So I can use some sort of jewels if I needed to. I could use a little flower if that's what I choose to use, made out of another piece of applique. I can come around here up top because some of that. When I go to the quilt show, they better have a scissor sharpener there because I am in desperate need of getting my scissor sharpener. So the back of this is heat and bond. So the heat and bond is what we're using to get everything to attach to this. Okay, so all of that's attached. We did not take the heat and bond off of the back of here because if we did, it would be stuck to my ironing board right now. And that's what we don't want. Okay, so everything is attached to this. It is, we pressed it. You could see I didn't press it a lot. So if I really took my thumb and I kind of pushed up against this, I could probably still peel this off because I didn't give it a hard press, but I want this all in place the way that this is going to go. I still didn't do her shirt, if you will. She is on an angle and she's not quite a silhouette looking directly to one side. It's kind of like you see her because you're seeing part of the back of her head at a off angle. And so the shirt is like here, but if you feel some kind of way, you could make a shirt that went across. Let me just move it where you can see it. You could make a shirt or a top or whatever that goes all the way across if you choose. You could have it go all the way down. And I would just draw it on the shape before just to audition it. And you could have it look like that. So you can, again, this is your decision. This is your creative license to determine what you want. If I want to audition the look of, and I wouldn't use this color, but if I wanted to add a choker, I could add that to her look if that's what I wanted. So I can make this look any way that I wanted to. Again, if I change that to the drape, you could see that drape look. There could be a collar if I wanted, and then I could layer the look of the clothing. This is up to you to depend on what you want. That's why sometimes I will leave certain parts bare to make a decision as to what I want to do. Now, of course, I would not use my blue fabric for this part, and I don't want to waste my gold because my gold is valuable to me. I love my gold fabric. But this is what I was talking about. She added a circle for one and then added the earring like that. So I was like, yeah, I kind of like that. I don't like it in the blue, even though I do think that blue is popping. I don't like this in the blue. I could make this a little bit smaller. I could drop it down a little bit like this, and I could add a string, a chain to go with it in there if I choose. I do have some gold ribbon that I could do something with. So I really want to think about like what this looks like when I'm adding that. So I'm thinking about changing that. Thank you, Miss Charmaine. I'm thinking about changing this to that circular one. So just to show you from before, this was the earring that we had before. And it's cute. I like it. But now if I have both of these in my house, I have two with the same thing. So if I want to change it out, I can use a circle, or I could use a different earring. So it doesn't have to be a circle. So I can audition different circles. And what I need folks to kind of understand with this is that when you're doing fabric art, you're making this your own. And you're using your scraps, you're using your paper, you're looking at pictures, you for inspiration, and you are deciding what it is that pops for you. So this is Together as It Is. What we have to do once I determine the background is I'm going to do a zigzag stitch all the way down all of my raw edges. I'm just going to zigzag all the way around. That's me. You could do a straight stitch within about 1/8 of an inch, like close to the edge on the raw side all the way around. Then you can either leave it like it is, and if you're not going to wash it, it's not going to fray, or you could do stitching inside of it. And what I mean by that, let me pull this one back up again so you can see it, and let me stand up so you can really see it. You can see where I zigzagged all the way around. I used gold thread for the zigzags. I didn't use gold in there? Yeah, that's gold. It's blending in with the red and the purple. So it really is kind of hard to see even though it's there. But I did use gold thread all the way around. I went all the way around because I felt like that gold popped that crown a little bit. So I went all the way around it with gold, zigzagging all the way around, because I told you zigzagging is my thing. And the zigzags aren't close together. It's just enough to hold it in place. Then when I did the quilting, I used the color of the fabric for the quilting. So I changed to blue for here. I changed to a purple-ish color. I did go a little lighter than this. I went red in here. So this is red. So I changed the colors, and what it does is it gives it texture and it gives it movement. So it gave me an opportunity as a quilter to practice my quilting stitches. Hey, HB. So it gave me a chance to Oh, absolutely, Renee. I have no problem responding to anything. So it gave me a chance to practice those quilt stitches, that meandering. I went around and kind of outlined each of the bricks here. I did loops over here. So I changed those stitches throughout. But this gives me the opportunity to practice these. I did straight line stitching over here for the earrings, and I echoed in her shoulder. But it gives me the chance to practice those. You don't have to do it. The main thing that you do have to do is you have to at least stitch down your pieces, either with a zigzag or a straight stitch. Why? Because that glue is not going to last forever. The glue is like a temporary hold. It's not a permanent hold. Even when you do patches, you use the heat and bond heavy a lot of times, but they'll still tell you to stitch it down, because in the wrong temperature in your home, it's going to peel off because this heat is glue and it reacts to the heat. So it's easier just to stitch it around. Different people will tell you how to stitch it. You can use a blanket stitch. Again, that takes longer. You could use a decorative stitch. Again, that takes longer. But whatever the stitch is, you can use this. So now that I have all of this done, my question is, and that's why it would take a little bit of time for me, I'm going to make a decision. On a background. Kind of reminds me of like water. Let me go. And this isn't necessarily the background, but what I do, again, audition. I'm going to audition how I want this to show up on the fabric that I have. Yes, I love this blue. I do. That's why it's still in my stash. So if this blue works, and this is kind of like directional, so it's going this way. And notice how it changes the look when I turn it that way. I do kind of like that blue. When I saw it upstairs, I was like, but we're not going to discuss that. Yeah, some people have fabric in their stash for years. So, but that blue like really helps it to pop. So I do like that blue on there. I don't need a big piece of it because this isn't big. It just depends on how much room I need at the top or the bottom. But this is in half. So this is no wider than 22 inches wide. And then by the width of the fabric, which is probably like about another 22 inches. This is probably 2 yards that I have here. So, you know, I can make that decision on what that looks like. But I love not marrying myself to a background, which is why I love layering it this way, because now I can audition those backgrounds to see how that would look. If I'm not in love with the blue, which I think I am, when I saw this, I was like, that blue. And this isn't going to work, but I just want to share with you this fabric, because this is one of the fabrics that I tend to use. So it's like an ombre. And it's going to blend her body in some ways in there. But I love that look. And this looks better on this screen than it does in real life. Let me just say that. So before you tell me that that's perfect, it's not showing up like that. This down here that looks like this bright, like the sunset. Oh, it's not showing up like that when I'm looking at it. But notice like how the brown in her skin starts to blend in with this. It's one of the reasons why I'm not necessarily a fan of it, but I do like, I like that ombre. And I could switch it, right? Let me turn it this way just because I can let the fabric hang. No, it's not going to work. Let me flip it this way so you can kind of see it. This is why I can't get stuff done. And Charmaine, I can do it that way too. So now her face kind of stands out, right? And I'm not worried about the back necessarily. And because this is so colorful, it would work with it like this. And it's almost like she's going to the light. Like, see, that's where you get like those little sayings that go with your quilt, because you can look at it this way. Okay. See, you know, like great minds think alike, like a sunset. Absolutely. Yes. Like I like the blue, but I have other ombres. Like this isn't the only one, but this was the one that like I could put my hands on quickly and I was like, ooh, but maybe if I used a different color for the skin tone, it might work on this. Or you could do a bit outline of this in a different color, like something like a shadow, and then that might work on it. Who knows? But like I said, I would audition these to see how it works. I think this was the one, Charmaine, was that it? Like that? You said to turn that way. So if we turn it this way, right, again, we're not worried about necessarily her body washing into it as much, but this is her face here. I also could, if I can open that up. And again, this is why, like, it takes, like, there's sometimes when with fabric art, you don't rush the process. And people will say, you know, it took a while to create the thing. And this is why, because you're playing around with color, you're playing around with fabric, and you're thinking about what this is going to look like. The ombre goes from dark to light to dark. So I could take advantage, if I'm really in love with this, right? Have less dark, have more light. I still think it washes, but I'm just sharing it with you, just a different perspective. That light now is there. And it would work, whoops. It would work for this particular one this way. Okay. So again, like I'm going to go through and think about like how I want this to show up in this space. So do I want to use it? And even this ombre, right? Like, do I have another one? Or if I don't have another one, if I really like this, just because I might decide to keep this. Like I'll go back and forth with the blue and with that. Maybe I'll put it on my social media and get a vote and see what people think. Maybe I'll push that around and see what the ideas are and lift it up so that you can really see it with the brightness of the light reflecting on it. But this is why it takes fabric artists a long time sometimes to create the thing, because you want to audition the fabrics to get it to look the way that you want it to look. It's not in the cutting. That was quick. The tracing, that was quick. But it's all in auditioning the fabrics the way you want them to go, how they represent themselves on your background. And again, like I can turn these all sorts of different ways to get a different look depending on the movement of the fabric. I can decide if there's something else that's going to be in there as well. So this doesn't have to sit by itself. It could have something else there if I decide to do that. But I'm going to make a decision and I am going to finish her. We won't say how long it will take because, you know, I'll be lying to you if I said that. Where do I buy these beautiful fabrics? So, believe it or not, this ombre fabric, This was gifted to me from the quilt shop owner at the quilting circle. She was like, you know, I got fabric, and when I saw this, I was like, yep, because I love ombre. So I took this one from her. I do have other ones that I got from quilt shops. So, and it just, I can't say where, because different quilt shops sell different fabrics. And so I couldn't even tell you, like sometimes I'm at a quilt shop and I see something, or I see something that another quilter did. Quilted Artistry is one of my favorites that I follow. She does a ton of applique and fabric art. Renee Valdez, Florange Valdez. She does a ton of work. I'd made Mass Time, which is on my wall. She taught that class. I have a Warrior quilt that is not finished yet, that I need to work on, that she taught me as well. And so a lot of the techniques that I have are from her. That's why I have steam a seam and all these other things that I bought, tracing paper that I don't always use, because that's what she taught me how to use, and then I do it my way. So she showed us how to do those things. And then when I see them in my travel, that's why I have so much fabric, I pick it up and I'm like, oh, I could use that. And because I do like to use applique, because it's a great scrap buster to do this, that's what I end up using that for. Thank you, Carmen. So like I said, for this is just the beginning of the piece. And again, I may decide to switch this out, because to know me is to know, well, it's around here somewhere. It's in that pile back there. But to know me is to know I love a gold earring, even though I'm not mad at the blue. I'm not mad at that blue earring. So I may choose to do the blue, or I may choose to get a gold one. I could make a hoop out of it, see if I like a hoop better. Or some other design, but I'll think about like what that earring is going to be. Is it going to be the same one that they had before? Am I going to do a different one? While I'm making those decisions, however, because some things have to get finished, this is the one that is going to get done. So this has already been quilted. All of this has been quilted. So the only thing that I need to do is figure out what's going to happen in this space. And then once I figure out what's going to happen in this space, I can square all of this up, and then I can add the binding, and this one will be done. So this one should be done very soon as I figure out what I'm doing in this space. This one, I'm really thinking about what kind of background I want to use. And again, while I do love the ombre, my first love, when I saw it, when I was going through fabrics today, thinking about the fabric, I still love this blue, but you should see how many different things I have with a blue background. But I love how that looks. So I do love the blue. I do agree that the blue works. Like I said, the ombre works as well. Kind of looks like water. I like it in this direction for it, even though it's not really a directional, but the strokes seem to go this way. And so with her going in the same direction as the strokes, I don't like the way that looks. With her going in the other direction, I think that looks better. Did you use a printer to make the picture bigger, or did you trace it? So this is the original picture. And again, this is any picture. And again, as a reminder for folks, this could be any black and white line art. So I will absolutely, when I'm making applique for a child's project, I'll go online and I will Google a picture. And I do black and white. And usually I can do coloring page. And you could use this as a coloring page and color this in if that's your fancy. Like, I want to see what it looks like if I use reds and golds. And then lay that out. So you could do that. Like I said, for the designer, she made all this one big panel, and this was all her hair in the back. She used this for her band. So you can change this any way you want. She gives 3 different ways to do it on her YT page if you want. But I took this into my copier. I made it 200%, and 200% got me this. So this is at 200%. I could have gone up even bigger. If you have a projector, you could trace all your pieces from the screen to the from the projector screen to the wall, and you could trace it that way. So then you wouldn't even have to copy it. You would be able to just project it to the wall and then make it as big as you want. So it could be even bigger if you wanted it to be bigger. So this is totally up to you how big you want it to be or how small you want it to be. If you just want to start off with a practice, you can absolutely use this size. This may be a little bit bigger. This is 8.5 by 11. So this could be the front of a tote bag, if you will. And again, you could use vinyl in place of the fabric, in place of the cotton. Again, this is all batik fabric. Her body is regular cotton. I do have batiks that I could have used, but the first one I put my hands on was the cotton. I used everything in my stash. I could probably make 20 of these and still not make a dent in my stash. Even with all of the different batiks that you saw, there's a whole nother bin upstairs. And then there's another bin that has even more batiks in there because I keep buying more batiks. And in about 4 months, I'll be going to another quilt shop. I'm just convincing myself that I don't need to buy any more fabric. But I digress. You can, like I said, you can purchase this. This is nothing bigger than a fat quarter for this size to do her body in. So you could buy the color of the flesh tone that you choose and then just use scraps for this. And your scraps could be anything. I am thinking about doing one in all Ankara print, so I am thinking about doing that one as well, and then I'll have 3 of them. And maybe I will finish quilting one, and maybe I will do a giveaway for it. Maybe. And that's not including my fan, who I do need to get to the post office for. So, but not unless she tells me she wants something like this. But anyway, so hopefully, like I said, there's a lot of information today for just getting the applique together for this. The, again, designer, and I want to say it's Tony Rain. She is here on the Tickety Talk. She's also on IG. She's also on YT. You can find her there. And you can find this pattern. It's on YT as a free download. She does have other fabrics, patterns that you can purchase. I love the fact that she's done the work for us so that I don't have to do the thinking myself, even though I can. So I do love this design. I think it came out absolutely gorgeous. So please make sure that you are following her. Give her a follow, follow her work. Again, this is my last official week for February of doing spotlighting African-American or African or Black quilters and fabric artists. But of course, I will do that all year round. But this was like a fabulous one to get. I focused on easy and free, but like I said, she does have other patterns that you can purchase as well. So it was either easy or free. It wasn't always both. But you need this. You need some sort of adhesive. So again, you can get that heat and bond if you prefer for that heat and bond. If you prefer wherever it is, because I done moved so many things around. You could use the steam-a-seam. And I bought this a bazillion years ago, and this was cheap. for what I bought, but this is like 5 sheets of steamacine. So because it was only 5 sheets of it, if this is 8.5 by 11, is it? A little bit bigger than that. Like, this is all you get. Whereas you get this by the roll if you do the heat and bind. Thank you for the roses. So this was a little cheaper, and it was really cheap when JoJo's was in town. So this is perfect. Again, if you prefer, it's not a must. This is Crayola. And so this is a cheap light box. You do not have to get the ones that are like a century in cost. This was like 20. So this is a great light box to use if you prefer to use a light box. Again, it's great to have a pair of fabric scissors. And it's great to have a pair of paper scissors when you are cutting. Makes your life a lot easier to have a pair of applique scissors, because you can get into those tight spots, but it's not necessary. And you just need to have some fabric and some fun. So you can absolutely get this done and do a great job. If, of course, as always, if you need my help, if you need me to go on live with you, you can DM me for any questions. Here is all of my heat and bind, because I save it for future projects. All of those pieces that I didn't use go in here, because there are some pieces that are small enough. Those were, I got 2 that I messed up because Monica caught that for me. So there are plenty of things that you can use. Again, you need pencils, either a regular one or a mechanic. The marker helps to see everything through the page while you are doing that. You need your sewing machine, because eventually, now that this is together, once I've decided on the background, I am going to stitch around all of those edges. And I'm using a zigzag. You could use a straight. When I put this down here, when I decide finally what my background is going to be, I'm going to score the back of this, take this off, and press this down to the actual piece. Remember, if you take it off ahead of time, it's going to stick to your ironing board, unless you use a silicone sheet. You can buy the silicone sheets and press it onto the silicone sheet, and then it won't stick. But if it's going to sit for a while in your hothouse, if you keep it on 75 like me, then you may want to keep the plastic on, or keep it in the silicone paper so that it doesn't stick to something because it's so hot in your house. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you for joining me, Miss Charmaine. You know we got to go to work tomorrow on time. I tried. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate you. And just make sure that I didn't miss any other comments before I hop off. Did you use a printer? I answered that question. I think I did good with questions today. I think. Good night, Miss Charmaine. Okay. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I may do a part 2 next week for this one. So maybe what I will do is I will commit to what the background is. Maybe. If not, I'll do it on a separate live and then do another project. So we'll see. But one way or another, I'll go on live. I'll show you how I stitch around it, because it's not that deep. But I'll show you how I stitch around it. And then we'll talk about like how we fill it in, because everything that I did on here was not done on my long arm. This was all done on my domestic machine. So, like part of the challenge, even though I'm not a part of it, Carmen said for the Black Sewing Network, like to make something and to use one machine. So I was like, yeah, We can make a quilt. We can make a project with one machine. And that one machine is my trusty, dusty Husqvarna Viking machine that I can make everything on and not touch that long arm that I've spent all that money on and still don't use like I need to. But I'll make a decision as to what I want to do. But I filled in everything. It's not that big of a space, and it can absolutely be done when you're domestic. So again, thank you everyone for joining me this evening. It is now past 11 o'clock. We're past 2 hours. And I know that you have to go to bed just like I do, even though I took a nap, because it's another wonderful day in the wonderful world of education at Benjamin Franklin High School. So again, thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the gifts. For those of you that gave gifts or sent your daily heart me, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your comments, your suggestions, your help, everything that you offered, because I cannot do this alone. And again, I'm never offended by anybody jumping in and helping out and or commenting in this space. We all do things a little bit differently, and your wisdom and your advice is gladly appreciated. Thank you, Shamir. Shamir, you could absolutely do this, Shamir. You could absolutely do this. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great evening. I will see you next Tuesday with another project. And I might be on Saturday because we're going to be sewing for 6 hours, y'all. 6 hours. So I will see you then. Have a good one.